All right, this is the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carvajal here with Matt Hawkins as always. Today our guest is Billy Quarantillo, who is fighting December 7th when the UFC goes to Washington D.C. Billy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you guys for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. Not MMA related, but I noticed on your social media you got engaged recently, and we just wanted to say congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of the only times you'll see me post anything not MMA related. Yeah, we went away for my longtime girlfriend. I surprised her with a quick trip to the Bahamas, which is pretty easy to get to out for here in Florida. Proposed to her at Pig Island, and that's something she always wanted to do. And now I locked her down. Now I'm full steam ahead for this UFC fight.
Nice,
Well,
man. That's great. I mean, it looks like a perfect timing, like a life-changing stuff going on. Obviously, you said you're in Florida. Ray hooked this up for us. How do you know Ray?
Who's that? Razel?
Ray Robles.
Yeah. So we met a while ago out here, and we've kicked it a few times, and yeah, he's from I met him out here in Tampa. I don't know where I met him at a long time ago, but I grew up in Buffalo, and I've been around D.C. a lot, so I've met people from all over. But yeah, I've lived here in Tampa now for almost 10 years.
Was your move down to Tampa MMA related as far as finding better gyms to start training at, or was it just another move in life that got you down there?
Yeah, it was. It had a lot to do with that. So I basically, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, a little small town called Lewiston, and I got my associate's degree. But when I was getting my associate's degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after, but I loved training. Like I started training while I was getting my associates, but I knew after my associates I wanted to get out of town. And my first amateur fight, I met Rob Kahn from Gracie, Tampa, and they had a lot of good things to say about him. So I looked him up, and my sister was living out here in Tampa. So I basically came down here to look at, schools to get my bachelor's degree. But I ended up just finding Matt Arroyo and Rob Kahn and all these guys at Gracie Tampa South. And I basically decided to stop going to school, basically put my school on hold, and come out here and train full time. And it was a really risky move at the time. I was an 0-1 amateur fighter, and Matt Arroyo basically took me under his wing, and I basically came out here, started training full time. It took me a long time, but I'm finally in the UFC.
Yeah, that's a good move, actually. I mean, when you look back at what happened with the sport, and you said you're in New York, and it was banned in New York, so
Yeah,
obviously getting out of the state helped you fast track your career. Um,
definitely.
so you actually kind of answered what my other next question was: if jiu-jitsu got you into MMA, and you pretty much just said that that's the case, right?
Yeah. Well, even before that, so I was training a little bit before I moved to Tampa, but like basically when we grew up, there's not a lot to do in small town, Western New York. It's so cold all the time. But we would love going out and like partying, and we would always get in fights. Like we had all my friends loved fighting for whatever reason, just boys being boys.
Hmm.
But they would always be like really sloppy fights, a couple punches, a takedown. And then one day, my friend Ken Blazik, he moved back from Colorado to Buffalo. He moved home basically, and he showed me. He basically did a seminar where he taught a triangle choke and an armbar from closed guard, which I didn't
Hmm.
know what any of that stuff was, like closed guard or any of that stuff. And when he showed me that you could win a fight off your back, I fell in love with like what MMA is now, because I didn't realize that you could win a fight like that off your back. So yeah, jiu-jitsu got me hooked on MMA. And now it's funny because I love striking now, but jiu-jitsu is what got me here.
While MMA was banned, I traveled to Buffalo for a football game years ago, and I think I recall that there being King of the Cage events like at Seneca Casino or something. Does that sound
Yep, yep,
familiar?
yep. I fought for them. I was the King of the Cage champion for a while. Yeah, it was so MMA was banned in New York up until a few years ago, but they would have fights on like the Indian reservations, which was actually a couple miles from where I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York. So my first amateur fight was on an Indian casino, and then even when it was legal, I would go back there and fight for King of the Cage because they already had established MMA promotion. So when it became legal, they basically already had everything needed to basically put on shows. So it worked out perfectly for them, and it worked out for me in the end.
Obviously it did. I mean, so I know a lot of people, most people that are following you now that are excited about DC know you from the Contender Series, but I mean, you were on season 22 of Tough. So
Yep.
you're always kind of on the. Is it safe to say that you were always kind of on the UFC's radar since 2015?
Yeah, I think so. That was always the plan after Tough. It was heartbreaking losing like that. I was so close to getting the opportunity then, but I really do believe everything happens for a reason. And maybe I wasn't ready. I especially wasn't ready as I am now, where I think I could beat a lot of these guys at 145. Back then I was happy just to be on the show. I was happy to be a part of it. I was happy to win and get in the show. But I've been trying to get back into that point, and I knew what it was going to take. And I've been just taking people out left and right, knocking people out, submitting people, putting on exciting fights. And I knew as long as I kept finishing people that I would get this opportunity again. And I finally got the Contender Series call, and I made the most of it. And here we are now.
I actually just rewatched that fight before we started talking, and one of the things, one of the things that I kind of, two things came to mind when I watched the fight. One was how, like in the first round, you had some trouble, but I also saw the jiu-jitsu side of things where I was like, he's defending himself. He's not really in that much trouble. He's kind of making this guy wear himself out, and then you took advantage of that later in the fight. I know Helio referred to that as letting them cook themselves for a little bit. That's what I saw in that fight. But I mean, with all your experience and the Tough background and the fight coming up in DC, are there any UFC jitters for you? I mean, it seems like you've always kind of had them, around. So are you nervous outside of just, regular fight jitters?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I believe in like the Dominic Cruz theory that like any like superstitions or ring rust or UFC jitters, a lot of that just comes from lack of training. A lot of guys get smoked in their first UFC fight, and some of that's UFC jitters, but some of that is they're just not prepared. A lot of guys, they go 7-0, 8-0, but they fight guys who aren't good. So when they get that UFC fight, what may look like UFC jitters is them fighting a real contender for the first time. And if you look at my record and my resume, I've fought some tough guys. I knocked out Kama Worthy. He's in the UFC now. He just got a knockout win. My last 3 fights have been all against guys who are like 9-2, 9-1, and now 18-3. So I don't believe in UFC jitters. I believe in being underprepared, but I think I'm going to be prepared for this fight. I'm all in. I'm a lot more mature than I was when I was on Tough 4 years ago. And I know it's at stake. Any loss now is detrimental to your career. So I need a few more wins, and I need them now. I need them in these next few fights.
You mentioned your journey, and it's, from a fan's perspective, it's pretty cool to see you go from the Ultimate Fighter, then to the Contender Series, now to the UFC. So you've kind of taken the steps that have been created basically by the UFC to allow a pathway for fighters. And it just dawned on me, and I might have to ask Nolan King or some of the people who are a little more knowledgeable on the history of Tough and the Contenders. But do you know if you're the only fighter to ever win a fight on Contender Series Tough and now go to the UFC?
I actually thought about that the other day, and I don't know who else, but I do know my boy Julian Erosa. I think Julian Erosa was the first one to do all 3, but he did a little backwards. He did he went on the Ultimate Fighter, then he won the UFC, and then I think he got cut after like 1 or 2 fights. Then he came back, won in the Contender Series, and then got back in the UFC. So I think I'm 1 of 2 or 3 people that have done it. But it definitely hasn't been a lot of people. So I'm super excited about it. I think I'm going to be the first one. I hope so. I'm going to be the first one to win in the old Ultimate Fighter building, and then the new Contender Series building, because that was built this year. And then the UFC. So I think I'll be the first one for that. And which, I'm always chasing records, so it's always gonna be cool to me to find out, how the chips lie after.
Yeah, that's a cool transition there. Going back to your days on Tough, when I looked it up, I realized you were on Team Faber, and that was the Faber versus McGregor. What was it like being around those characters? What was the experience with Artem Lobov and McGregor, and then obviously Alpha Male team? Was that pretty wild?
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was I've obviously talked about this a bunch over the years, but it's still like it almost felt like a dream. We didn't have our cell phones, we didn't have any any news, we couldn't watch TV, no music. But I'm around all these guys that I've seen on TV over the years. With Team Faber, it was, this was before all the Cody Garbrandt, TJ stuff. So I was training with Cody Garbrandt every single day. And then TJ Dillashaw was there for a few weeks too. So it was like Uriah Faber, Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, Dan Severn was there for some reason. He was there the whole time too. And then our whole team. And then, Andre Feely, Joseph Benavidez, what's his name? Lance Palmer. So all these guys, like I knew who pretty much everyone on our team was. And then of course, like the McGregors and his whole team and all the European fighters. It was so cool, man. And I truly believe this, which they could never make this official, but I feel like to get in the UFC, everyone should have to do a season of The Ultimate Fighter because it will change you. You're there for 6 weeks. There's so much testosterone in the room. It's all dudes. It's all fighters. It's all alpha males. And, man, it'll test you. It broke some people, and a lot of people, you could tell they didn't want to be there. I made the most of it, and I learned as much as I could from Faber and from those guys. And it's like a rite of passage, man. I feel like the guys who've done that, they've been through something that it's like a brotherhood.
Yeah, and it also seems like it's a crash course, and like you said, not just a test to make sure this is something you want to do, but a crash course in how you have to handle being around the cameras and media and doing stuff like that, and the pressure of the Dana White sitting cage side and watching and stuff like that. That's pretty cool that you shared that with us. I didn't even think about that myself after watching so many seasons of the show. But talking about European fighters, I think your opponent in DC, Fishgold, he's from the UK. Is that right?
Yep, you're right. Yeah, and this reminds me. This is like I feel like this is how tough would have went if I had a whole training camp with my team. Because it's a lot different. They basically, you're in this tournament, but they're basically like, I think it was on like a Friday. They're like, all right, Billy, you're fighting Saul now, or they basically called me out, and it's like a Friday, and unfortunately for that weekend, and I don't take anything away from them, but like Uriah Faber and a bunch of the guys had a charity golf tournament they had to leave for. So I basically didn't have anyone coaching me the couple days before. It just worked out that way. But I'm like, it's like the biggest fight of my life, and I don't have any of my coaches there. And my coaches who are filling in they have a charity golf tournament, which I get because that's what's important to them. But it's a TV show and there's circumstances. Yeah. But this is going to be me in my training camp with my coaches, and you guys are going to see a different animal. And it's a very tough fight for both of us. But I have a lot of weapons going into this fight.
Yeah, talking about the weapons, one of the things I was researching him a little too. He's got a lot of wins by submission. Do you feel like that's something you want to test on the ground, or are you looking to put him out of like his comfort zone and keep it standing, looking for a knockout? I know you got a lot of knockouts on your own.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that too. He submitted a lot of the guys in Europe, but he hasn't. I don't really think he's gone against a guy as well rounded like me. And he's never been able to submit a guy like me before. That I'm a 4-stripe brown belt. I'm actually going to get my black belt. I'm scheduled to get my black belt. They basically told me I'm going to get my black belt. They told me at the beginning of the year that I'm due to get my black belt, like I'm ready for it in December. Yeah. And it just turns out I'm supposed to get it a week after the fight. So I kind of look at it as like the last test. I got to fight one more black belt. It's going to be my 4th black belt I fought, and I'm 3-0 against them. So it's like one last test before I get my black belt. So wherever the fight goes, I'm ready. But I think the crowd wants to see me knock this guy out. And that's what I'm going to be looking to do. I'm looking to take his head off. And if he wants to grapple and take me down, I think we're gonna have a crazy fight on the ground. But yeah, if it's up to me, we're striking, and I'm finding that chin.
I noticed that in your record, when your pro career started, you won a majority of your fights by submissions. Was that just something that you were fighting opponents that you found easier to submit, or have you got more comfortable with your striking as your pro careers advanced?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, and sometimes it doesn't tell the whole story. I one absolutely. I got a lot more comfortable with my striking, especially in these last like 2 years. I tore my ACL after the Eric Reynolds fight, and I basically took 7 months of just boxing. So I just box. So that really tremendously helped my confidence in my hands. But yeah, sometimes it doesn't tell the whole story. I've had fights where like I'll drop a guy and then I'll jump on him and choke him out. So that counts as a submission, but he got rocked. So I'm looking, I just want to be known as a finisher. So however I get the opportunity, I'm looking just to take you out of that fight, whether it's with a punch, a kick, a knee, or a choke, or an armbar, or a leg lock. I basically want to put, I want to put a highlight reel collection of finishes together. So that's always my goal, to finish, no matter how it comes. I'm looking to end the fight before it goes to the judges.
I mean, you definitely showed some of that boxing in the Contender Series fight. Like I said, I only just watched it a couple hours ago, and you do, like, I feel like there's so many headhunters in MMA. You did a lot of like up and down, high and low attacking, confusing your opponent that had the refs come in and stop the fight. But the boxing that you just mentioned, I mean, you threw that overhand right or right straight. I don't know how many times in that fight, and it seemed to always land, or at least make the guy fall back. I mean, you finished him standing up. I mean, how did you find? I mean, do you work a lot of cardio? Because you threw everything 100% with full intention of, like, it looked like you weren't getting tired.
Yeah, no, I was trying to kill him. Honestly, he was trying to kill me in the first round, so I was trying to kill him in the second. Yeah, no, my conditioning, it's weird, man. It's and I say like I've had slow starts, but I also have a bunch of first round finishes. But I feel like it just takes me a little while to get going. But once I hit that stride, and sometimes I hit it right at the beginning of the fight, I feel like I can outlast people. And a lot of that's conditioning training, and a lot of it is I just keep sparring. Like when sparring night comes, I do 5-minute rounds with fresh brand new guys coming in trying to attack me. And it's something that I've consistently done over the years. Before I even knew it was a big deal. Like, I just thought that was normal. But now I can see that, like, not a lot of guys like to be the fresh. They don't like to be the guy that stays in. They like to be the fresh guy. And I don't mind doing that 5-minute rounds. Even if I get beat up a little bit, I'm going to keep going and going and going. And good things happens when you don't quit. You just keep breaking opponents, and that's what I love to do.
I noticed, I think I also read you've had some boxing matches as well mixed in during your career too, correct?
Yep. So I had, I went 9-2 as an amateur MMA, and then I did an amateur Muay Thai fight. And then after that torn ACL, basically the doctor told me that I can't do MMA for a year, that he wouldn't clear me for 12 months. And we got in a little bit of an argument. And then I kind of went around him, and I figured out, like, if you could fight in MMA after 12 months, I figured you could box after like 8. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up boxing after 8 months. No wrestling, no jiu-jitsu. It was actually a really fun training camp. All I did was like lift weights, do knee rehab, and box. And I just boxed like crazy. And it was fun. And then I ended up, I put on a boxing clinic. I fought a guy who, wasn't very good. He was a pro boxer, but he wasn't, he wasn't undefeated or anything. So I ended up beating him. And then the next weekend, that was about 8.5 months out, I got right back into jiu-jitsu and got ready for my next pro MMA fight.
It's funny you mentioned arguing with the doctor a little bit. We had Jake Smith on a couple of maybe a month or so ago, and he had to take off of training because he had something going on with his hip. And it seems like for liability reasons, they always tell you to quit doing the thing that you were doing that you're gonna go back to doing anyway. Yep. So and this is like the second or third time I'm hearing personally that you followed your passion and it paid off. So I'm glad that you stuck up for yourself and did some other combat sport and returned to your roots.
Yeah, and it all helped, man. Like I said, I came back and I was still, that boxing didn't leave, so my hands felt sharper. I was landing more combos, and it was, it's crazy. Like I would never say this, but my boxing coach was like, that torn ACL was the best thing that ever happened to you because you turned into a different animal. I started waking up super early. Like I used to hate waking up at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to work out. Like I thought people were crazy. And then when I tore my ACL, I instantly, like, I couldn't ever sleep. So I started waking up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and I would just lay in bed. And then I would start waking up and getting out of bed at like 4 a.m. and working out and lifting weights. And now it's still in a routine of mine for the last 2.5 years of like waking up 2 or 3 times a week at 5 a.m., lifting weights and going back and starting my training that way. So it really kind of changed me as a person. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise.
It's pretty crazy you had that 8.5 months off because with your boxing and your Muay Thai and your MMA, you've essentially averaged a little over 3 fights a year, basically for the whole 9 years you've been competing. So you've been active nonstop since the day you started fighting.
Yeah, I attribute a lot of my success to that. I've always stayed busy. It cost me I got these big cauliflower ears. And the reason why was my one ear started getting really bad. But I had an amateur MMA fight like a month after, and I couldn't take any time off because I wanted to fight. I just loved competing. So that's why I got the cauliflower ears, because I didn't want to take any time off. And, I've seen a lot of guys kind of do it the wrong way where they fight and they take like a month off and they get fat and they get out of shape. And then when they come back, they're fighting just to get where they were before. So I've always, after I fight, I take like a few days off, maybe a week if I'm banged up. And then I make sure, even if I can't train right away, I get right back in the gym and I just keep building that consistency up and the compound effect. And it's really paid off for me, especially in the last few months. I'm kind of reaping a lot of the rewards from it.
That's cool, man. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm jealous of your energy, because I get up at 6 to train sometimes, and that's early for me. And you're talking about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So I mean but that's why there's levels to it and to what you do and stuff like that. And I'm also jealous that when you're gonna get your black belt, because when I got mine, I had no idea. I actually thought I was going to be a brown belt for like another 5 years until, but my instructor is cruel about stuff like that. But man, that's a crazy journey. Talking about being from Buffalo, New York, I have to ask you, and we mentioned the ban on MMA in New York. If you watched last weekend's UFC 244, just really quick, what was your opinion on the whole thing as far as like the doctor stoppage?
Yeah, they're in such a tough position. So I was in the Bahamas, so I didn't see the actual fights yet. I'm dying to see some of those fights. I saw that Kevin Lee knockout, which was insane. Yeah. And I saw the results. But yeah, man. So again, New York is so new to the UFC. It's not like Nevada where they've had hundreds and hundreds of reps. And in my opinion, it sounds like they got a doctor who is a good doctor, but he's not familiar with the UFC, and specifically Nate Diaz, who has so much scar tissue. He's going to bleed every fight, Every fight he's busted up. Same with Nick Diaz. So it's unfortunate. I didn't see the whole fight. It sounded like Masvidal was beating him up pretty good. I didn't see it. It is always unfortunate when a fight stops from a cut, especially with a guy like Nate Diaz, who it doesn't really matter how much he's bleeding. He's going to keep fighting till, the fight's over. So it sounds like it was really unfortunate, but I did see the cut and it looked terrible. So it sucks, especially I'm a fan at the end of the day, and you want to see fights go and you want to see exciting fights play out. And we've all seen it hundreds of times where a guy will be cut really bad and he'll go and win the fight. So I got to watch the fight again, but it is unfortunate that it happened. And I saw a lot of people that were disappointed with it.
Have you ever trained or met Masvidal down there in Florida?
No. So interesting enough, I met Nate Diaz a few times. He came down a while ago for a seminar, and he's got a lot of close friends in Orlando at 6 levels. So I've actually trained with Nate Diaz a couple times. I've been to ATT a few times, maybe like 3 or 4 times, but I didn't see Masvidal there, or if I did, I just didn't like remember seeing him because it was back in the day. But no, so I've never trained with Masvidal. I would love to get down there and train with those guys. About half of my pro fights have been against guys from ATT, but I think we're all cool now. You know,
Yeah.
I won some, I lost some, and I've won a bunch of them, so it's all good.
I think when you watch the fight, you'll see. I mean, obviously, you saw the picture of Diaz's eye.
Yeah.
It was obviously a bad cut. Masvidal was wrecking him pretty good. It wasn't. Now, obviously, the argument with Diaz is always that he's got the 4th and 5th round stamina, and that's when he makes his stand. But he was taking some punishment, so I think that probably had a little to do with the doctor as well. I see a lot of people comparing it to the Tyson Fury cut from a couple weeks ago where they let it go. But
yeah, I watched that fight too. I think totally different circumstances. And,
exactly.
You know, and every single round, and you know, the shorter boxing rounds, every single round that guy closed that and he went right back out. With the Diaz fight, you're in there for 5 minutes and you're getting kneed in the face and it's leaking everywhere. It's, you know, it's a tough call.
Yeah. No, and whereas Fury was really being defensive and is known for being a pretty well defensive fighter, he wasn't taking a lot of shots on that as the fight progressed. Whereas Diaz was still, I mean, he got cut like 2 minutes into the fight, and after the 3rd round, he was getting hit on it a lot. But
and Tyson Fury was arguably outboxing him still, even with that cut. So
exactly,
kind of comparing apples and oranges, but. You know, a lot of people were saying if it was in Nevada, they probably would have let it go longer. But yeah, it's a tough situation. You know, especially with these guys who've been fighting forever. You get the scar tissue. I have a little bit, and every now and then, like this cut opened up a few weeks ago, but it was tiny. But you do, man. The scar tissue opens up a lot easier, so it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean that's too bad that it's something that you once it happens that you have to worry about. But I doubt that's anything you're going to have to worry about. I mean, you got a lot of time. Your fight's on December 7th. You said you spent time in D.C. too. So I don't know what the crowd is like for MMA. I've only covered one event there. It was the PFL, their first season there. So I do know there's a lot of like people looking for something to do. So I'm pretty sure you're gonna probably fill that arena. You know, DC's a nice little town.
Yeah, it's gonna be. We have a lot of people message me. They're flying out. I'm bringing a huge crowd. I've actually fought in DC 3 times already. And I was always the main event. I always sold it out. So it's gonna be, I think, a very pro Billy Q, a very pro American crowd, and I think we're gonna put on a show. You know, I think he's gonna come out to try to knock my head off. I'm gonna do the same thing. I have a lot of weapons. He has a lot of weapons, and you know, let the better man win.
Have they given you any idea about your bout placement on the card yet?
What I've heard just from my manager is I'm going to be about the middle of the prelims, like the regular prelims. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm fine with that. You know, I'd love to be on the main card, but you know, I'm a new employee, so I still, even though I've been in MMA for a while and I paid some of my dues on the Contender Series and the Ultimate Fighter, you know, this is the big show, so I gotta earn my stripes still. So wherever they put me, I'm going to go out there and do everything I can to put on a show and make it exciting and look for that kill. And then we can talk from there and you know, talk about bout placement later on. But I'm just happy to be there right now, and I'm going to be happy to put on a show in front of everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for you too. I mean, I one last question for me. I'm sorry to cut you off, Matt, but I have to ask you because I in my notes I don't have it. You don't have a fighter nickname? I mean, the only one I found for you was the Channing Wahlberg that Uriah Faber came up with. But,
yeah, you know, the thing with nicknames is, you know, you hear about some good ones. You know, you hear a good nickname, and you're like, oh man, like Tony Ferguson, like El Kakui. I think that's so cool, and like it fits him perfectly. But then you hear a lot of bad ones. You know, there's so many bad nicknames, and it's like, come on, man, it almost takes it away. So like, I've always believed that like nicknames got to be like earned. Like you gotta earn them, and you know, I like the Channing Wahlberg, but that's kind of like a joke. It's not like my nickname. So I'm gonna keep going with Billy Q. You know, no one can say my last name Quarantillo, so it's just Billy Q. And you know, I've had like other ones that like people joke around, like Billy the Squid, because I used to like submit people. Like I used to wrap people up with my body, but I just like to keep it basic, and I like to, I like my talking and my fighting to show out on its own. I don't need some wacky nickname that I just made up or someone made up for me, because you do see a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, you do.
That's funny. Anything out of the ordinary in your training for this fight? Are you changing anything up, or are you just sticking to the game plan that's been successful for you so far?
There's every fight we make a little bit of adjustments. I'm doing a lot more strength and conditioning than I've ever done. Not a lot more. Last training camp we did a lot for the Contender fight. I have a personal trainer. They're at a place called Driven, and they whoop my butt. I was there today. They whoop my butt. They whoop my butt every time I'm there, and it's been paying off tremendously. I'm a lot stronger. Usually athletes are trying to get bigger, faster, stronger. Mine, it's like I have to stay the same size and actually get smaller, faster, and stronger. So it's a little bit different than your average athlete. I think I'm just getting smarter and better. I'm basically tracking as much as I can. I'm tracking my sleep schedule, making sure I'm recovering enough. I have an app for that. I have a meal prep company. I have a CBD company. I do a lot of the recovery. I'm stretching a lot. I'm basically just doing everything I can to be the best fighter I can be on December 7th. And that's just kind of tweaking things a little bit, because I've learned a lot since 2010, the things I can do and can't do. And we're basically just having right now, I feel like I'm in like the NFL, like with my schedule, I train like a pro athlete now, which is something that a few years ago I just wasn't doing. It was back then, it was just like, the wild, wild west. I would work and I would train, and now it's like a consistent schedule. I know what I'm doing every day. I know how I have to recover. And, if I can't train a certain day, I have a backup plan for everything. So, I have a lot of people following my schedule and a lot of people helping me. So I have a really great team. I'm on a 5-fight MMA winning streak and a 6-fight, total with a boxing match. I've won the last 6 fights in a row. So I have a lot of confidence and a lot of momentum going into this fight that I think makes a big difference.
Awesome. I guess one quick other question. You obviously sound like you stay in great shape. What kind of cut do you make when the time comes?
Yeah, so I get pretty big. I get pretty big way outside of camp. But right now I'm probably, it's not going to be a big cut for me. So, basically fight week when I get there, I'll be under 160 when I get there. So it'll be, a little bit over 10 pounds that last last weight cut, but it's pretty easy. I've had some really bad ones, and those really bad ones have actually helped me because now I know what I'm capable of. So when I do it right, it's pretty easy.
All right, Billy. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Do you want to throw out any sponsors, any social media, anywhere anybody can contact you or follow you?
Yeah, of course. All my sponsors help out. I'm going to keep posting my sponsors throughout the training camp. You can follow me on Instagram at BillyQMMA. Really simple. Twitter and Instagram, BillyQMMA. That's where you can communicate with me. If you heard of me, you can DM me and I'll follow you back. And just get ready for a show December 7th. It's going to be a war.
All right. Again, that's Billy Quarantillo fighting Chris Fishgold, December 7th, ESPN 7 card. I believe your fight will be on ESPN Plus for the prelims. We'll talk more about the actual event when we get a little closer, but we want to wish you best of luck, and we'll definitely be tuning in.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Have a great night.
You too. Fans can always catch us at Combat Hour on Twitter, at Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on Instagram, myself at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter and Carbeerzol on Instagram. Until the next time, Ed, good talk. And Billy, again, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cool. Peace.
Good night.